Good morning, Phil.
Hey, Kelly. Thanks for having me. Excited
Yeah,
to be here.
you as well. So, we decided to have this conversation because we spoke a few weeks ago, and I kind of wish we would have recorded that conversation from a few weeks ago because we just went on so many different tangents and had so many cool things to talk about. So, we're going to record it now today. And we've decided so Phil and I both have gone on this journey of really harnessing our own modalities of healing and allowing energy, freeing up energy, allowing energy to come through. I've experienced his work, he's experienced my work, and man, I just had such a powerful session with you, and I couldn't put one specific word as to what it was. Like, you can't characterize it under Reiki or breath work or NLP, but you have created your own method of doing this work. So, can you explain a little bit about how you came to your own method and kind of what it is?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for the tee up there, and thank you for the kind words. um, yeah. So, I think anytime you have someone who is uh, kind of creating their own method or thing, there's intuition involved. And right, because if you're creating something new, there's something that's got to be telling you to do that. Just following some kind of inner guidance system. And so, really, I'm sure it spans many, many lifetimes. Getting me to a place where I just feel like there's these dormant gifts that I have been awakened, and also, looking at the human as infinitely resourced and having infinite potential. So it's all just hardware and software, and we have these different capacities that are available to be brought online. For me, one of my mentors was really instrumental in kind of creating space and being a shower for me and showing me what was possible, and a coach and a healer. And what I found fascinating about him was he was his name's Orrin Harris, and he was one of the most impressive humans I've ever met. And I noticed that, a lot of these high performers that I look up to, and they're famous and are doing great things in the world, they talk about how many books they read and how many, trainings they've done. And, there's a place for that, certainly. But Orrin, he said something like, I don't really read books for, for my magic. Magic is just to be received in the moment and, expanded into. And I thought, wow, this guy is one of the most magical people, most impressive people that I have found. And it's all from just receiving the moment and receiving his magic and allowing intuition to guide him. And so I started noticing that with a few other people that I followed and held in high regard. And so that path just really opened up to be the path of, like, this is the true path where we have access to the quantum and our infinite potential. It's not from cramming into our brain and absorbing and learning as much as we can. There's a place for that. But that's a linear model versus a quantum. And
Hmm.
and so in doing that, so much has opened up for me, and it's just really trusting more and more my intuition, my readings on certain things, my felt sense of intuition, things that are lighting up, and also clearing my channel so that my wounding, my fear, my judgment, all that kind of stuff doesn't distort the container, because it certainly can. If I can't sit with an uncomfortable silence, then I'm not going to be able to receive my intuition in that moment. And so it's been this journey of working through whatever stuff arises in my end so that I can clear my channel, so that I can be an empty vessel and really allow spirit and my intuition to guide the process.
Mm-hmm. Mm. And remind me, are you a projector?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. The
Uh-huh.
space holders. It's so funny. That's like the tagline I give projectors is space holders. And that's what I experienced in my session with you. And I think you're so on point with us at this time period needing to, as I would say, like in my musical language, essentially get into the practice room. We don't need to be stuffing our head with information anymore. We're actually on an information overload at this point in life. And one of the things that I love about music so much is okay, I can sit and read with my eyes the score that's sitting over there on my stand, but to make music, I actually have to go pick up my instrument and play my instrument. I have to do it myself. And what I'm so excited to see is people like yourself stepping in and saying, okay, I am surrendering myself over to source. I don't quite know what this looks like. I know that I'm sensing something, feeling something that's coming through, and I'm just going to have to work with it, go for it, and try it and see what happens.
Absolutely. And are we ready to be the creators?
Yeah. Hmm.
And Oren, my mentor, he asked me that a couple years ago, and um, you know, I was still in survival mode, and I was still and when we get into survival mode, we get into consumption, and I was consuming stuff at the moment like nobody's business. But this kind of stepping into creation is really, it requires some vulnerability because you got to put yourself out there, and putting yourself out there without necessarily knowing what's step A to Z. You just know step A and B. You know what I mean? And so we're coming from a place where the mind wants to control everything and see where everything's going, and this creating from the moment as a channel doesn't require that. It actually requires freedom to just be in the moment and receive it and not be attached to any outcome or direction.
Yes, absolutely. I know in I always use analogies back to my musical journey. It's funny for me, it's like becoming a professional musician actually completely prepared me for this new role I'm stepping into because it was the exact same process as what I'm going through now. And you know, especially like the couple days leading up to a performance, we wouldn't rehearse too much because we would leave something there for the magic of the moment. Because that's where the magic happens. And it's that we get to experience the magic in the moment. And you do have to get to a point where you can let your mind go for source and that energy to flow through.
100%. Receiving the moment is being in tune with the vibratory states, the frequencies, the resonance, so that we can feel what's in harmony and we can feel what feels inspired on an energetic level. So I love the music analogy, and I use it all the time.
Mm-hmm. Um, One of my favorite questions to ask people is how do you experience your intuition and your internal guidance? Like where in the body do you feel it? Do you have clairvoyance? How do you experience it personally?
Yeah, I don't have. um, Maybe I have a little bit of clairvoyance. Um, from time to time, I think there's a little clairvoyance, but I think it's more claircognizance. Um, and so gnosis, that's a word that has been coming up a good amount lately, and where we just have this kind of inner knowing that things are going to be a certain way, and that when we speak from a gnosis, it's like you can feel the frequency of that. You can feel, and so for me, I really focus on felt sense of intuition, and so and that comes from feeling frequency. So, which I think is a really, really important um, capacity for us to bring online as we move forward into ever a more, you know, increasingly complex society with so many different variables, and as um, the trust in historic institutions like government, media, trusting them as authority figures when they're losing all their credibility, it really leaves us in a place where the world's going to get crazier and crazier, and we don't really have any trusted authority. So what are we going to do? How are we going to make sense of things? What's the filter for truth? And to me, it's filtering it through our frequency channel. Do things feel in resonance or are they not? Because you
Yes.
can actually feel frequency of truth, authenticity. Authenticity carries a certain vibration that's channeled as truth from the moment. And when someone's speaking from that place, you can feel it. And when someone's super heady and disconnected, you don't feel a resonance with it. It just feels like hot air. It feels empty. And so that's a big focus of mine in my personal work and my client work is guiding people to clear their channel so they can feel that resonance of energy.
Hmm. So, so true. And that's like,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, yeah, and to build off of that, um, in terms of feeling into opportunities, same thing. We get information there through frequency.
Mhm.
So, and to me, my cosmology, there is a co-creation with higher intelligence that we can access. So, a really amazing mystic named David Lyon, um, he shared with me that whenever we feel a sense of expansion, and I don't know if you have that reference point, but when we feel into our consciousness energetically, we can feel this kind of like mystical expansion feeling.
Oh, yeah.
It's because he said it's because our higher self is trying to guide us in that direction.
Yes.
And that when we feel expansion, we know that there's expansion in that direction.
Yes.
And another one, so that comes up for me, and I pay very close attention to that. Anytime I feel that expansion, I'm going in that direction because that's all the information I need. Um, but also, if you think of frequency, and um, you know, we have access to all this currents of potential energy. We can actually learn which currents carry the most potency, the most potential energy. Excitement is one that carries a lot of potential energy, right? And so, if we can learn to attune to what is authentic excitement, that has a lot of potential energy that we can then create with. And so we're energetically funded by the universe when we receive those currents and we can turn them into currency.
Yes.
And so that's just one little thing to be paying attention to. Where's your passion?
Hmm.
And what lights you up the most is how you light up the world. So those are
Hmm.
some of the ways I think about it.
Hmm. And it's so funny and synchronistic. Like, and just our connection in the last month has been so synchronistic. I'm running a moon cycles workshop right now to help people become more attuned to their emotions, because the moon does reflect back to us all of these different shades of emotions. And as I teach people, our emotions are really just kind of like our buffers that help guide us towards, just as you explained, either you feel that passion, you feel that excitement, yes, I'm going to go that direction, which, like, a caveat to that people have to learn is usually you are going into the unknown. If you're just following a feeling and no other information has come through yet, you have to be comfortable enough to follow the unknown, to go into the dark, to be able to see what's there. Or if you're feeling the negative emotions, that's just a buffer saying, okay, you need to try again. You need to go a different way. Something's not quite right here.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. So, on this journey of spiritual awakening and I don't know what you call it, waking up, um, your relationship with the unknown will definitely come up, and that's to be um, felt through because generally there's a lot of fear of the unknown, and all fear is a fear of feeling. And so when we drop into feel the feelings, the fear of the unknown, that energy then gets to move through us like a weather pattern, creating more space for us to receive the unknown, to trust the unknown, to co-create and play with the unknown. And when we can play with the unknown in that way, then we're talking about quantum potential.
Yes.
We're talking about manifesting miracles because we're trusting in spirit. There's a faith that's required for that paradigm to work. And when you trust into the unknown, that's where literally miracles can be manifested all the time. They're always
Yeah.
available.
Yeah.
And with this, you know, in this dynamic, we're talking about feeling feelings. There is um, a skillfulness that we would do well to learn in feeling through our feelings and mindfulness. This is mindfulness really,
Hmm.
but because feelings are not facts. I've heard that before from people. That we're not our feelings, that we're just the awareness behind it, and feelings carry information.
Yeah. Can I actually jump
Feeling,
in
right?
here on one thing?
Yeah, totally.
So
Yeah.
in how I teach, I actually teach that there is a difference between feeling and emotion. And I wish that we could put this more into the zeitgeist. I think that it's going to become more of a thing, but the act of feeling is tapping in and using a sense to experience something. So you feel with your sense of touch. You can feel vibrations. A feeling I would associate with like hearing. You hear this. It's I associate feeling with a sense and taking in information from one of your senses. Whereas to me, emotions are this very specific sort of sense that comes up internally. Um, Emotions over the period of history have kind of been this aloof thing that it's really hard for us to scientifically talk about and describe emotions, but it's what makes us human. Because, right, if we didn't have emotions, then we really all would just be robots and we would all be the mind.
Mhm. Mhm. I love that. Yeah, that's we could do a whole podcast on that. I think I think the way I think about it is I use this term called receiving channel. And so our receiving channel is how we experience the moment. And it's through sense perceptions, through somatic experience. And so we can learn to really fine tune that awareness, that capacity to feel and discern. And so, you know, if we get triggered, we're going to be in an emotional reactive state. And that's not where we want to really be making decisions from, right? And so we can learn to actually receive the moment more deeply so that the energy can flow. And when we're in the receiving of that flow of energy, feelings, sensations, emotions, um, and information will reveal itself through that flow. And I call this the flow of clarity because a feeling, sadness, is a direct experience of here and now. There's no distortion, it's just happening.
Yeah.
That is the clarity of the moment. Tightness in my chest is happening as truth of the moment. That is clarity.
Yeah.
And so when we're in the receiving of this energy, clarity, that's the receiving of clarity. And clarity is alive and dynamic and it only exists in the moment.
Mhm.
And when we're in this receiving, clarity can reveal itself as a revelation, not the product of a mental process. It just comes as a gift.
Mm.
And so this is really an important kind of capacity to bring online because we can discern what's clarity that's arriving through the moment as a gift, like a felt sense of intuition, versus, oh, I'm feeling all these things and my mind is connecting dots and telling stories about it.
Mhm.
Because that's a very key discernment. One is the mind using analysis and coming up with stories. And by the way, they're going to be pretty compelling because that's what the mind does,
Yeah.
right? And so it's going to be like, and so what we can do is filter that through the receiving. Does that feel in resonance or not?
Yeah.
And So that's a
Mm,
very key kind of nuanced distinction, but when we are
mm,
able to kind of bring on that discernment, it's really, really important because we can feel into what's a story and what's really resonating as truth.
mm-hmm. And I love that you just connected the mind and the heart, which is what we all just need to do more. And we need to remember that connection, tap into it, put it online, and really it's the practice of connecting those two, because most people in their modern day lives, they're sitting on their computer like looking at spreadsheets, writing emails all day. We've just gone away from a society that is consciously spending time tapping into their heart during the day. They may get that email of something really difficult that they have to deal with, and they are not consciously aware that, oop, I've been triggered in this moment. They just react instead of taking a moment to step back, disconnect, and say, or just feel, not even disconnect, actually, that's the wrong word, to just feel and say, you know what? Okay, I don't have to just react in this moment. Let my brain go off. I know lately, I have been using a technique whenever these moments come up in these stories, because I've really been working on all of the stories running through my brain on a daily basis. And then whenever a story comes up that I don't want to run anymore, I go into the void and I say, nope, we're going into the void right now. We're going into the dark. We're going into the nothing. Because in the nothing, all possibilities exist. And another possibility where I get to change this situation exists. So I'm just going to redirect right now and go there instead of here.
Interesting. Interesting. And how's that been working?
It is helping me be less reactive. It's
Mm-hmm.
interesting. I have some big challenges in my life right now that I don't have answers for. That's probably been the
Mm-hmm.
most challenging point, is that I there's I can't just like come up with a logical solution in this moment to fix the problems.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I really am in a state of surrender right now and just trusting that the universe is going to guide me towards the solutions in the surrender.
I love that. Yeah. And I spent a lot of time there, searching for the answers, really trying to find them and grasping. And my experience is that when I find myself there, I am grasping, I'm resisting something. And so it's about dropping in more deeply to receive the moment and letting go of having to have the answers will make you a better vessel for inspiration to find,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? Because have you ever, been in a room full of people and you're like, oh, what was that guy's name? That actor's name? And you're trying really hard to think of it and it's just elusive. And then you're like, oh, I don't remember. And then boom, as soon as you let the guard down, we're not trying anymore because when we're trying, we get into tunnel vision. And when we let the trying go, we zoom out
Yeah.
and we have more awareness and things to come to us. So I actually had this exact same dynamic raised on a group coaching call I was leading yesterday, where the person had, a really strong inner critic, and she was saying, I'm learning a lot from you, but I'm trying to work on my inner critic. When the inner critic comes up, I said, nope, don't have time for you. Like this isn't your place. And what I said to her was that, how would you feel if someone said, nope, don't have time for you. This isn't your place. You're gonna get try and get louder.
Mm-hmm.
You're gonna push back because what we resist persists.
Yeah.
And so what I offered was that, anytime an inner critic comes, how can we just meet it with harmony? And one of my teachers, Jack Kornfield, says, when judgment comes, self judgment or any judgment, he says, ah, yes, the judging mind. Thank you for your opinion. And in that way, what he's doing is he's bringing awareness to it. So he's acknowledging it with a lightness, with almost some humor, some play, and just gently noticing it. And so when we bring that softness and allowing space to the inner critic's not going to have to punch us in the face because we're saying, "Hey, I see you." To use the Buddhist term, we're having tea with Mara,
Mhm.
and in that way, it won't have to be as loud, as vociferous, trying to get our attention. And then we can focus on, all right, what is the inner critic saying? What are the patterns that it's coming with? What is it telling me on a regular basis? And then we get to see, okay, here are the limiting beliefs. Now, when did those start? What is that? And then we can work on shifting them, right? So taking what they're giving us and then maybe just shifting it in a positive direction. So thank you for the tee up there. I just felt like I wanted to offer up an approach.
Yeah, and what this reminds me of is whenever I am teaching my own music students, and even actually I've been experiencing this lately. I just found a new yoga instructor, and I picked this up from, man, I just had such amazing teachers growing up, especially a few music teachers. And it sounds like you did as well. I see, like, you can hear in people's language, these threads of what they're drawn to, what they really pay attention to. And I hear you speak so much reverence for your teachers. It's probably one of the reasons that we have really connected. But whenever I'm teaching a music student something new that's really hard, I don't tell the student that this is going to be really hard. I know it already because I've gone through that process. I knew that, oh my god, this new fingering, they're gonna follow all over it for the first couple of weeks, but then they're gonna get it and it's gonna be fine. Um, but I just encourage them, go ahead and do it, and I act like nothing's wrong. Nothing's really hard. You're going to be able to figure it out. You're going to do it. You might stumble through it at first. But I don't give power to the fact that they're going to be confronted with a challenge, but it's not a bad thing. These challenges, these things that we perceive as hard, we're just putting a label on it. And yes, those emotions of frustration will come up, but in the moment, you're going to recognize it. You may, like, when I'm practicing, I make a lot of noises, like grunting, and I'll like talk to myself and kind of coach myself through things. And you just work through it and you keep going and you allow it to move through you. That's why emotions are associated with water, because you have to allow them to just keep going and keep flowing.
100%. 100%. Emotions are energy in motion.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So it's important. And it's important. The motion part's really important
Yeah.
because a lot of us are just walking around with a whole lot of stuck energy because there's no
Yes.
motion.
Yes.
Um, what instrument do you play?
I play the bassoon.
Oh my gosh, I have to Google. I have to Google what is bassoon.
It's a
Hold on. How do
giant
you spell bassoon?
Bassoon.
Oh my gosh, it's so cool.
Yeah. It's like a really
I
big
know the bassoon.
flute. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
that's so dope.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow, I got to hear some of that.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I like what you said though about not telling them it's going to be hard and just letting them work through it and find their way. And
Mhm.
it reminds me of the butterfly cocoon deal
Mhm.
where you can't, someone saw a caterpillar who had turned into a butterfly trying to break free of the cocoon. Have you heard this one?
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And so they saw it struggling, they wanted to help. And so they opened up the cocoon for it. And then it fell flat down to the ground
Mhm.
to its death
Yeah.
because it's one of the genius inventions of nature, or arrangements of nature. the cocoon had to be strong enough so that it was just strong enough so that the
Mm,
new butterfly had to strengthen its muscles enough to break free. And since they helped do it for him, he didn't have the strength in his muscles, and so he didn't make it.
and
Love that
another
story.
thing about caterpillars turning into butterflies, and oh my god, who is it that I'm totally blanking on his name right now? Whose story I it's a physician who has become very well known in this space. Um,
Zach
maybe I'll
Bush.
Yes, Zach Bush. Yes, exactly. Okay.
Yeah,
So he
yeah.
has been using this story a lot lately in his podcast interviews of how the head of the caterpillar actually comes off whenever it goes into the cocoon, creating this metaphor and analogy that the old mind gets left behind whenever you go through this
Ooh,
transformation
that's good.
process.
Totally, totally.
You have to
I love that.
grow a whole new mind.
Yeah, I love that. That's a really powerful metaphor and applies for so many things. You know, if I look back at my life and remember my childhood, and it's kind of unbelievable how different my, I guess you would say, my mind is. Like the things my cosmology, my worldviews, the things I care about. It is like never in a million years would I have guessed that this would be the journey that I'm on. And for us to, step into um, greater, more evolved versions of ourselves, we often have to leave behind the old baggage, and that's growing pains, that's metamorphosis,
Yes.
and that clinging on to the old is what creates a lot of friction in our lives.
Yes. Well, and this is why I think I have gravitated towards astrology as my main tool for helping people because as a Pisces, I love living in dreamland, like these grand stories and teachings, and I just love it. So, especially in studying the mythologies, and as you go around, the wheel of the zodiac is actually the story of life. Most people they know what Capricorn is, they know what Aries is, but they haven't put it all together that it is essentially the hero's journey. So you have gone through the first 6 signs and you've discovered your own self and what your self is, what you represent. But then you get to Scorpio. And Scorpio is the sign and the part of the story where you go through a phoenix rising moment, a whole death and transformation cocoon moment. So you actually have to burn down the old self and rise out of the ashes to be able to then, the second half of the story is after you have explored the self, you explore the self in relation to other people, other cultures, to the universe, to the more outward expression, learning about yourself through experiences with others. And so that transformation moment, it is a part of our story. And we all go through all of it. You know, whenever people come to me and they're like, well, I know my sun, my moon, and my rising. I'm like, okay, great. That's me. That would be you showing me your hand. But I'm not actually seeing the rest of you. You're a whole being. You're all of it. You've got all of it in there somewhere. Let's go in and see what you just haven't become aware of yet. We are such multi-dimensional, multi-layered human beings. I find people so fascinating, the fact that we're all so unique, and I love hearing people's stories and how they've transformed through their life. It's to me it's that is what makes this world so beautiful, is how unique we all are.
100%. I love that. And ever evolving,
Yes.
and so every moment is different from the previous. And I think there's a festival in India that every 7 years, I think, where every 7 years we are a completely new organism. So every cell in our body has died and regenerated. So that cellularly, we there's literally not one physical part of us that existed 7 years ago. And I might have the math wrong, but that's the idea. Um, so yeah, and I love my coaching work, just feeling all of the unmanifest magic that exists within somebody,
Mm-hmm.
and in helping shine a light on that for people and guiding people to their own clarity so that they can step into more expressed versions of themselves.
Yeah. Because in this sense too, we're not meant to do this journey alone. We are here to do this journey with others. And actually, the only way for us to know ourselves is to do that in relation to others and other things. One can't exist without the other. Black or dark can't exist without white. We're all just different shades of it. I always kind of wonder what would happen if we all just painted ourselves blue one day? Like, what would happen to culture? We just said, we're going to paint everyone blue. You're all going to walk around blue. What would
Hmm.
happen then?
Yeah, it's interesting. It is interesting. um, yeah, I had a thought just now, and this is a little out there, but I think this is a safe place for that. um, you know as we evolve and I guess fear and judgment, evolve out of our consciousness, then we're kind of in a more unity consciousness. And so differences aren't going to be judged against, we're going to be celebrating them. And, I'm also curious about these ET civilizations
Mm-hmm.
that really there's a uniformity in across their race where they all look exactly the same. Some civilizations.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wondered if that was like something they came to evolutionary where in an evolutionary way where they're like, all right, it's not healthy for us to see difference. Like we're all the same, so let's all look the same. And then, does that bring up another layer of love? I'm just curious to me on this subject, like
Mm-hmm.
thinking about that. When you said, what if we're all blue? I was like, well, ask, the Arcturians.
Yeah, that is so
Yeah.
interesting. One theory I would have on that tangent is that they have actually evolved past emotions and no longer
Hmm.
have emotions, so they don't care about that. Um, but they're also like, I personally do believe in ETs, and
Oh yeah.
yeah, I
Okay.
believe that they have evolved to a higher state where, because they are vibrating at a higher frequency, they don't want to be down here in this dense world that we are in.
Hmm.
So because they are um, vibrating so quickly, we can't see them with our physical eye, even though I believe that they are there.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, the
Down here in
ET
3D
thing
world, though,
is,
it's a little different. Yeah.
uh-huh, I know. I mean, over these next 20 years, it is interesting that you bring that up. Well, because you bring up the last two signs of the zodiac. So we have reached Aquarius, where now you're kind of getting bored with your experience, essentially. Aquarius likes edgy. It likes new. It comes up with the brand new technologies, the forward thinking. And that's Pluto has now gone into Aquarius. So for the next 20 years, space, technology, ET. It also represents humanity because the mythology around Aquarius is this figure of the water bearer who can both give life but also take life. So it is going to give water to the healthy life, and it will wash away what is no longer necessary for the growth, for the future of humanity as a whole. Um, but it does like edge. It likes being unique and different and being able to be unique and different within the whole. So it'll be interesting to see how humanity deals with that. Do we care more about technology, or do we care more about humanity and what's good for humans? It's like that's going to be the battle here in these next like 5 years especially. But then you also brought up, so at the very end of the story and of the zodiac, Pisces. Pisces is the connection to all. It's water. It is absolute truth, because essentially there's objective truth and there's subjective truth, right? We haven't really come to a consensus on what truth as an individual word actually is. So the two polar opposites, two separate truths that compete against each other, can't exist at the same time.
Can or cannot?
I think they can. I think that they need each
Mm-hmm.
other. Aries
Mm-hmm.
needs Libra.
Mm-hmm.
Pisces needs Virgo. That's you have to have two things at the end of the string holding it up for it to exist. It has two sides. Um, but with Pisces, it's universal. It represents the all, the connection to all, and it is the energy of going back to source, the ultimate death. Whereas in Scorpio, we transformed into a new form to continue the journey. Now in Pisces, you're reviewing what you've done. You are completely dying off. It's almost like we should have a different word, a separate word for death to represent these two stages of death. And then you're
Mm.
starting a whole new thought, a whole new beginning when you start the wheel over.
Interesting. Wow. That's fascinating. I've never thought about it in those terms. And I'm Aquarius, so resonate with some of that.
Aha, it makes sense. You're channeling. Do you know what your rising sign is?
No.
Okay.
It's been told to me, but
Uh-huh.
is there a way you could determine that
Yeah.
quickly?
We could plug it in and see. Okay. Let's see.
Yeah.
As I'm plugging this in. Okay. So, what's your birthday?
February 10th, 1985,
What time?
9:39 a.m.
And where were you born?
Alexandria, Virginia.
Virginia. And isn't it interesting cuz
That's gonna be
you're
good.
living back in that part of the country now, correct? Had
Connecticut.
you
Yeah. A ways
Okay,
away. Yeah.
had you stayed in that part of the country for most of your life, or had you traveled?
Most of my life, I traveled for about 3, 4 years. Really, last
Okay.
5 years, I was all over the world.
Okay, gotcha. It's just interesting, like as COVID shook everyone up, I've seen a lot of people migrate back towards home. And I know I've even
Hmm.
experienced this. I literally came back home, which is so interesting. I think right now so many light workers especially, one of the things I have struggled with in the last couple of years and is now opening up into a new chapter, but I felt so alone for so long. I felt like, why am I being put here? And I'm not really seeing other people like me around me or doing this work. And I really think that we are being pushed to the different corners of the world where these places need light.
Hmm. Yeah, I resonate with that, and I've noticed that too. I've noticed that trend.
Uh huh. Okay, so yeah, Aquarius. Is it okay if I put your chart up on
Oh yeah,
the okay,
totally.
cool. Let's see here.
I'm stoked.
Screen share. This be oh cool, and I even have us in the little thing. Okay. Um so here's your chart, and Makes so much sense. You work with groups of people. You're an 11th houser, which is the home of Aquarius. It's interesting. Like, you were born as an Aries rising. So your story it starts at the beginning. Um, Let me see
That's
here.
definitely true.
And makes sense about in someone's chart. I always look at their Neptune to kind of see where their channeling abilities might fall,
Mm.
because Neptune is like our spiritual tuner. It's an area
Hmm.
of life where it's like there's this veil over us where we don't understand why we have this gift, but we do, and we just know that it's true. And so you channel all of these teachings, and especially teachings about systems, Capricorn, the ability to expand, the ability to grow, the ability to grow things in your life for the long term. Capricorn is the mountain, climbing the mountain. Um, let's see. Moon in Libra, and you were in the Scorpio, okay, generation. So right at the beginning of Pluto and Scorpio, which um those of us, like, this is the home sign for Pluto. Um so those of us with Pluto and Scorpio, this kind of like millennial generation, like, I think personally one of the reasons that like our boomer and kind of early Gen X parents have had so much resistance to millennials is because they could feel how much power we brought to this earth, and that we were born, you were born with, so the first millennials were born with Uranus in Sag, which Sag represents our belief systems. And Uranus is the planet of shaking things up, of the rebel, of the unexpected, doing something different. So millennials come along and say, ooh, we have all this power. We are going to liberate our sexual energy, Scorpio. We are going to change these huge belief systems. And then once it goes into Capricorn, which is more towards my years, kind of, I think, like 1990 going forward, we're going to come along and change business, how business is done, the big systems. And we're like essentially fucking up everything that our parents' generation built. We're coming along and
Mm.
we're saying we want to do things in a different way. And so there's a lot of resistance there. Um, and let's see that your moon in the seventh house. So 29-degree Libra. Have you learned a lot of lessons through relationships?
Oh yeah. Just any relationships, like familial,
Yeah, any seventh house is not just romantic relationships.
romantic.
It's any just partnership that you create.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Um and like your Jupiter in the 10th house in Aquarius, so that is creating a career in something new and different. Especially Aquarius is channeling some sort of electric energy, channeling energy through your nervous system, and you're focused on growing that energy. So that's what you're literally doing now.
100%. 100%. Wow, that's really interesting.
I mean, it's all there. It cracks me up. And you have become a wonderful communicator. Your Sun and your Mercury both in Aquarius. So you're learning how to communicate your ideas, everything that you're channeling and learning, to masses of people or groups of people in some sort of setting. And you
100%.
probably don't
So
even
is that is
yeah.
is there like a time window for that, or are you just seeing that in my chart like
So
generally?
this is just the way that I explain astrology to people is, so this grand paradox of, we, even though we are transforming and changing and building new cells, our core of our being is still the same. You're still going to be Phil throughout your life. I'm still going to be Kelly. You're still going to be in a masculine body. I'm still going to be in a feminine body throughout our life. So this, your chart, is the core of your being. It is your seed. Now that seed evolves. It grows into a tree. It grows all these limbs. You can pick it up and you can move it. If it started off in a jungle, perhaps you pick up that tree and you take it to California, but it's still a tree. It's still at
Mm-hmm.
its core
Mm-hmm.
those things. So what I see in people's charts is that that core is still there. And oftentimes when people are feeling very lost or they're going through one of these big transformational moments, having a big eighth house moment, those are the times when it's actually good to come back to your core, come back to your center, go more within so that you remember, okay, at the end of the day, I know that this is me. You come back to the I am statement. And for me, the chart serves as, yeah, just something to hold on to as you're going through those transformational moments, because we are here to have the human experience, and we do have to keep our bodies and our minds grounded in this reality. I know for me, I mean, I've been through these ginormous eighth house transformational moments the last couple of years, and because of all of my Pisces energy, I have trouble staying grounded. I can like float up in dreamland and space. I can sit and meditate all day long. But that's not the experience that I signed up to have here on Earth. I actually need to stay grounded in reality. So, for those of us that struggle with that, sometimes it's just good to come back to these reminders, these mantras that keep you grounded, to say no, even though it's very Gemini energy. You might have shiny object syndrome. Oh my God, I have that idea. I have that idea. I see all of it. I feel, as a Pisces, I feel all of it. No, I'm going to come back to my core and do me.
Love that. Really cool. I got to do a full on reading with you. That was
I would
potent.
enjoy that. Yeah. There are layers in there. It's amazing. And I think just like you as well, like when I experienced your session, we went through the session so intuitively. I didn't really need to say anything or bring up anything new. You were just feeling into it and intuitively guiding me through releasing things and opening up space. And that's what I do with my own readings as well, is I can look at a chart, I can get the base information, and I can start to push things together and see the layers. But ultimately, it's in the session when I'm just channeling and letting spirit
Hmm.
guide me. Ooh, they said this one thing. There's a layer there to go into.
Right. Yeah, I felt that within you. Absolutely. You have that ability.
Uh-huh.
And that's where we're, when we're co-creating with, a higher power in that way, so much magic is available to us.
Yes. That's when the light comes out of the darkness.
100%.
Yeah.
Mm, so good.
Okay. I think that this is a pretty good place to end this first conversation. I think that there's probably many more tangents that we can go on, but I feel like for today this is a beautiful place to end.
Yeah. Thank you so much. This was really fun and um, always awesome to riff with you. And I think we have more of these. We can play with, the energy that we're co-creating on and see what we can
Yes.
come up with.
I agree. Where can
Yeah.
people find you?
So my website, philkreutzer.com, or Instagram, Phil, which is just Phil Kreutzer. And
Wonderful.
I think you'll probably supply the spelling on that complicated last name.
Like mine as well. Yeah, we both. What is your last name? What heritage?
It's German,
Okay.
um, and it has, yeah, it'd be interesting to kind of dive deep on that and see what it means because I think it's connected with the cross.
Oh,
Kreutzer, it's like cross. So I think there's some kind of
interesting.
interesting religious components there.
And you know, in my sessions, whenever I do a soul blueprint session with people, I always run their name numerology as well. So we could look
Mm,
into that because there's a
yeah,
whole
that's I never even heard of
yeah.
that.
Yeah, another
What?
layer there.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Totally. I love
I
that.
yeah. I highly recommend doing a session with Phil at some time. Go and check out his schedule, see when he is running coaching sessions, or even just sign up with an individual session with him. You are such a beautiful healer, and I'm so grateful that we've connected in this lifetime. And so we'll continue
Mm,
these till next time.
yeah, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.